Good morning, everyone. I'm Megan Rancier, and over there is John Schutze, and we will be presenting your service today. Steve and Lynn Israel are here with us to handle various behind-the-scenes duties, and they're doing so brilliantly. And Elisa Merrill Price, Bob Price, Kevin and Noelle McClooney, and Robin Perry are providing technical assistance from home. We appreciate your patience as we try to correct some technical issues. Despite lots and lots of testing, the problems seem to wait until Sunday morning and then jump out and surprise us. You can help. Let us know how today's program looks and sounds by posting a comment. Thank you all so much for tuning in today for our live streaming service in light of the social distancing needed for reducing the spread of COVID-19. We are glad that we can keep in touch and support our community, even if we can't be together in person. If you'd like an order of service, please look in the comments on the video or see the email sent this morning. We greet you today as you join us in a wider search for truth and purpose. In this quest, may we encounter one another with open hearts and minds. May we inspire each other to consider new questions and seek deeper meaning. And may we cultivate wisdom and compassion. Let all who enter this place see a welcome face, hear a kind word, and find comfort in this community. May all that we do and say here today help us to be a force for positive change in the world. Please take some time now to think of all your friends at MVUUC. Physical distancing does not need to mean emotional distancing. Let us support one another with a moment of silent communication. Feel free to greet each other with a comment on Facebook, and remember that you can still reach out to each other every day by email, phone, social media, or video chat. Now, because there is a delay in the video broadcast, we encourage people to begin emailing announcements as well as joys and concerns now to services, that's SERVICES, at mvuuc.org, or begin posting the information to Facebook comments. We will remind you again later in the service to post your joys and concerns. Visitors, as we are a diverse group with varying interests and beliefs, our services are varied in format, tone, and topic. We encourage you to view several services to gain a good understanding of our congregation. If you'd like to receive our weekly email newsletter, please email us at news, that's NEWS, at mvuuc.org. MVUUC remains committed to supporting our members and friends during this difficult time of social distancing. For that reason, we are coordinating assistance with groceries, phone calls, and other needs. If this sounds like something that would be helpful to you, please send an email to SAC, that's S as in Sam, A as in Apple, C as in Cat, at mvuuc.org with your name and what kind of assistance you would like to request. Now is the time for announcements. Let's see what we have received via email and in the Facebook comments. Okay, our first announcement is that there will be a virtual congregational meeting on May 17th at 12:30 p.m. That's next Sunday, May 17th at 12:30 p.m. Look for your email newsletter for a link to that virtual congregational meeting. Next announcement is about the pledge campaign. So thank you to all, this is from Winnie Rex, by the way, thank you to all of you who have turned in your pledge forms to support MVUUC in the coming year. We are well on our way to our goal, but need everyone's help to reach it. So far, we have received $51,214 in pledges from 25 pledge units, but our goal is $83,750. The Board of Trustees will meet today, Sunday, May 10th, to revise the proposed budget. We hope to continue to provide quality Sunday services, religious education for our children, diverse programming and outreach for members and friends, such as yoga and drum circle, and to build our membership. Reaching these goals requires your time and volunteer efforts, as well as your monetary support. If you haven't turned in your pledge yet, please do so now. We're counting on everyone's support to keep MVUUC strong. Contact Winnie Rex at treasurer@mvuuc.org if you have any questions. And one more announcement about the pledge campaign. We are 61% of the way to our goal. Pledge packets are in all the recent email newsletters and posted in the Facebook feed. And again, the board will be meeting today to review pledges and the budget, so please take a few minutes to fill out your pledge form and send it to treasurer@mvuuc.org right after today's service. There aren't any other announcements, but I see people are greeting each other on Facebook, so we're going to continue now. The chalice will be lit today by Lynn Israel. Please join me in reading the words for the chalice lighting that appear as a comment on the Facebook Live video or in the order of service, which is also posted as a comment on the video. So here we go. Blessed is the fire that burns deep in the soul. It is the flame of the human spirit, touched into being by the mystery of life. It is the fire of reason, the fire of compassion, the fire of community, the fire of justice, the fire of faith. It is the fire of love burning deep in the human heart, the divine glow in every life. Please join as we now sing This Little Light of Mine, and we're going to be doing an a cappella version this morning. So I'm going to give you a starting note, or Lynn will give you a starting note, and then feel free to clap along with us. We're going to keep a steady hand clap beat going as we sing. And I will also announce every line for each verse when we get to the end of the previous verse. Okay? So,
You want to be flat?
yeah, be flat would be great. Okay. 1, 2, 1, and 2. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine.
And for today's opening words, I will be reading an Ashanti story as retold by Jessica York. And this is a story about Anansi, the spider. Anansi the spider loves to spin a tale. He can regale you for hours with stories full of wonder, full of fun, and stories full of facts, too. But he is so nosy. Anansi knows almost everything about everybody. Almost. But Anansi wants to know everything. So one day he goes to the house of the sun god. "Oh, mighty sun god, you see everything and everyone. Won't you share your great wisdom with me? I'll use it wisely to spin tales of wonder and fun for everyone." The sun god says, "Anansi, I will put all the wisdom in the world here in this clay pot. You must share this wisdom with everyone." And Anansi promises to do so. Anansi takes home the pot. He looks deep into the clay pot, and sure enough, he sees sights he has never seen before. He hears sounds he did not know existed. "This is too good to give away. I will keep this great wisdom for myself," thinks Anansi. "But I must hide it," he says, and he looks around for a good hiding place. Anansi decides to climb to the top of the tallest tree. There he will tie up the clay pot, and the leafy branches will hide it. He starts climbing the tree, holding the pot in front of him. The climbing is so hard. Have you ever climbed a tree while holding a pot? Anansi wishes he had 9 limbs. His youngest daughter is outside and sees what a hard time Anansi is having. "Father, it would be easier if you tied the pot to your back. Then all your limbs would be free for climbing." Do you think Anansi is happy to get good advice from his daughter? Think again. He thinks to himself, "She's right. That would be easier. Why is it some young pup thinks of this when I, who possess all the knowledge, all the wisdom of the world, did not?" Anansi gets so angry that he throws the pot to the ground. All the wisdom of the world comes flowing out of the pot. Some falls here, some falls there. No one gets all the wisdom, but everyone gets some wisdom. And this is why, even today, wisdom is everywhere. If you listen to the stories spun from storytellers all around the world, you will hear it. I'm a big fan of Anansi stories. Well, a few years back, I was talking to a disaffected Christian in search of a new church. She was in an interfaith marriage and was well-traveled, so she had grown tired of her small-minded congregation. When I mentioned Unitarian Universalism, she recoiled. "I've been to some UU churches, and it just didn't do anything for me." I didn't really know what to say back, so I just waited, and she said, "Where's the truth? Where's the beef?" And at the time I found this very silly, resorting to a decades-old commercial in a theological context. But I think it's actually a question worth asking. That being said, in our house, the question is more likely to be, where's the textured soy protein patty? But that's a topic for a whole different discussion. The question, though, is how do we, as Unitarian Universalists, develop a coherent and meaningful belief system that can do those things that religion is supposed to do, such as building a community, sustaining us through hard times, like right now, and providing something akin to salvation. So let's talk about salvation first, because I know that's a term we don't hear very often in UU churches. Just about every other religion has a path to enlightenment or a one true Savior, some singular set of instructions to follow, which will help you get to a better place, that will save you from something or another. We, on the other hand, let people believe whatever they want, right? Many people think of UU as Unitarian Universalism as easy church or religion light, Or as I've told people before, church without guilt. After all, one of the 7 principles is a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. But as I was working on this reflection, I realized that maybe we're often missing something there. Something that's right in front of our faces, right in those words. The responsible part. I would argue that this free and responsible search for truth and meaning is not, in fact, and should not be easy or even devoid of some form of guilt. And we don't accept all beliefs, as we often say. We certainly wouldn't tolerate a white supremacist or somebody who was advancing a belief that legitimized acts of terrorism. No, we believe in a responsible search for truth and meaning, which is going to require questioning your own motives. It's going to mean struggling to combat your own complacency, identifying your own prejudices, and devising a plan to become a better person. And if we do those things, that will cause guilt sometimes. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about shame, and I definitely don't expect anyone listening to fall to their knees and self-flagellate because they know they made a mistake. I'm just talking about that feeling you get when you know you probably just didn't do the right thing. Listening to that voice, it isn't always easy. And changing your behavior because of it can be even more difficult. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why so many people around the globe adhere to religion, because it can be hard to make yourself do the right thing, hard to make yourself better. So back to where's the beef? In many religions, you follow the prescribed rules and you get your burger, or at least the promise of a burger at some point. It's more or less as simple as that. Now, in Unitarian Universalism, we don't really have an easy-to-read menu or a drive-through. Rather, you can think of it this way. As you use, we're asking you to till the soil, select, plant, and harvest the crops, raise the metaphorical livestock, maybe even butcher the meat again. Metaphors only, too, reminding you that we are vegetarians here. And once you've cooked up that meal, without a detailed recipe, I'll remind you, we ask you to be your own food critic. But we don't stop there. No, no, no. We ask you to take that criticism, reflect on it, and start the process over again and again. With no practical end in sight, a continuous improvement struggle that has as an ultimate goal a world with a community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. A goal of what could arguably be seen as a heaven on earth of sorts. Wow. Now that seems pretty substantial to me. Forget about easy, guilt-free, light. Sounds like a daunting task compared to standing at the counter and placing your order, doesn't it? Of course, in writing today's reflection, I've had to start questioning whether I actually do this, whether I come close to doing all of this. And the answer to that is no, I don't come close to doing this, certainly not every day. So I have been trying to put this into action more often recently. And I thought I'd give you 2 examples that popped up for me in the last few weeks. They're not earth-shattering, but then again, it doesn't take an earthquake to carve out a riverbed, does it? So, for the first example, I actually had one of those Facebook memories that reminds you of something you posted years ago. And it popped up as I was working on this. And I had been reading at the time, 8 or 9 years ago, when I originally posted this, I had been reading a book called American Gods. And some of the characters were supposed to be various deities. And so I was doing a little background research on one of the characters, reading up on my Norse mythology. and I ran across what is known as the Poetic Edda, a collection of poems that was written down sometime in the 1200s, so 800 or so years ago. And it was being written down in order to preserve the beliefs of Norse pagan mythology. So probably the stories are older than 800 years old. What I came across, though, was this poem, the Havamal, which means wisdom from the High One. And it's a long string of stories and advice that's attributed to Odin. And as I read through it, some of them really I couldn't connect with. They were very out of date, but other things caught my attention. And one was what I had posted to Facebook and was reminded of 8 or 9 years ago. And it is this saying, "A paltry man and poor of mind at all things ever mocks, for never he knows what he ought to know, that he is not free from faults." Now I'd like everybody out there listening to maybe think about that for a couple seconds. And ask yourselves, can that be applied well in our society 800 years later? Another way to think about that is, did Odin see Facebook? Did he foresee the style of humor that's now so rampant in Facebook and all over our media? After reading that verse of the poem, I felt a little guilty. I thought of how easy it is to mock people on Facebook and how often I've laughed at things on Facebook that were basically mocking people, although they were funny at the time and maybe even supported a belief that I share with someone. But instead of wallowing in guilt, I'm trying to start withholding that like more often. I'm going to perhaps look for more things to post to Facebook that are uplifting or just plain informative, rather than those that put things down, or worse yet, put people down. And just for the heck of it, I'm going to share another verse from the Poetic Edda that is also very timely advice 800 years later. "The unwise man is awake all night and ponders everything over. When morning comes, he is weary in mind, and all is a burden as ever." I don't know about you, but I have been doing that, pondering things over all night, more in the last month or two, I think, than usual even. But for the last few weeks, I've started reminding myself of this advice, of this verse, when I get into bed, and it almost helps give me permission I need to shut off my thoughts about work or life in general or a pandemic and finally get to sleep. The last few weeks have also reminded me of, well, let me restart there. I'm ad-libbing a little here, but I started writing this before the pandemic and before I knew we would be doing everything online. A good example, though, of this looking for the wisdom everywhere and having a responsible search for truth and meaning came when a friend of mine offered me a book. And it was a book that was based on his religion, and that is the Mennonite religion. The Mennonites, if you don't know, are very ardent or strict pacifists. And when he handed me this book at first, I almost recoiled a bit, or I had a reaction to decline the book at least, feeling a bit like I was being proselytized to. But then I thought, thinking about what I was going to be writing this reflection about, that as a Unitarian Universalist, we're supposed to be drawing our ideas from other religions of the world. And to my own surprise, I read the book cover to cover, I think on one day while Megan was doing some work, and I found it extremely interesting, learned a lot about their religion and just about the history of this. For example, did you know that Mennonites fleeing the Nazis emigrated through several countries, being kicked out over and over, and a large group of them actually landed in Paraguay. They joined another group of Mennonites that had come there in the late 1700s, and that is still a strong community in Paraguay, and I never would have guessed or known about that. It also made me reflect more when we get onto the spiritual side of things, not just historical, on the ways that violence has been ingrained in my own upbringing. Not because people were intentionally trying to be violent or mean, but just being a member of sports teams, listening to stories of my family members who served in the military. And I also started to think about how I should be more aware of that violence that's been part of my upbringing, and how I might be able to weed out some of those influences from my life, or at least be more aware of how they may present themselves. Sometimes this might mean avoiding products from companies that are particularly brutal or that make other products that are used in war. It also might mean speaking up more often when somebody condones a violent solution to a problem, or even being a bit more selective about what kinds of media I support with my own dollars. And again, none of these examples are earth-shattering, but perhaps just a reminder that these little bits of wisdom are everywhere, and that it can be very easy to ignore things that could help us grow. Had I not intentionally been primed for this by writing this reflection, I might not have been as open to looking at these, reflecting on them, and viewing them from a UU perspective. So in closing, I say to you today that ours can be a substantive and deep faith, a sustaining faith, and even an inspirational faith. It can be as long as we're willing to admit that we don't have all of the answers, and as long as we're willing to open our minds to the wisdom that is all around us. Do you remember all the wisdom that Anansi let fall from his pot? And it will be a more sustaining, a deeper and more meaningful faith, as long as we're willing to take on the challenge to work towards a better self, a better community, and a better world. Thank you.
If you have joys, concerns, or milestones that you would like to share, please begin posting them as a comment on the Facebook video, or email them to services@mvuuc.org. This is just your reminder. So I'm going to do the UU principle connection. As John mentioned during his reflection, today's service concentrates on Principle 4, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I'd like to start my principle connection by talking a little bit more about the resources that we as UUs can draw from in this search. Like any academic, I'm more than a little concerned with the legitimacy and validity of my sources. And as a religious or spiritual organization, so is Unitarian Universalism. As UUs, we turn to many diverse faith traditions from around the world in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning, beginning with the 6 sources that are affirmed and promoted by UU congregations. I'm going to go through those 6 sources right now, and as I list them, think about which of these sources contribute most meaningfully to your own search. The first one is direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder, including dreams, visions, and profound moments inspired by everything from miraculous events, the beauty of nature, and the joy of being with the people we love. The second source is words and deeds of prophetic people. These can include religious prophets, such as Jesus or Muhammad, or other types of prophets, such as poets, artists, and social justice leaders. In drawing inspiration from prophetic people, we recognize that sometimes prophecy is not so much a prediction about the future, but more of a brutally honest assessment of the present moment and the historical truths that have brought us here. The third source is wisdom from the world's religions, drawing from holy books, mythologies, and teachings from many different perspectives, helps us to appreciate the diversity of spiritual experiences as well as the experiences that we all have in common. The fourth source is Jewish and Christian teachings. As the historical bedrock of the European and Euro-American religious tradition, or I should say American religious tradition, these two sources form a large part of the culture of church that many UU congregations adhere to. But they also inform the drive to promote social justice within their congregations. The fifth source is humanist teachings. Since many UUs are agnostic or atheist, our sources include many that look to human beings as the source of our own salvation or condemnation. UUs also value the contributions of science and technology and our ability to constantly improve our day-to-day lives and the lives of others in the present time, rather than storing all our hopes in the redemption of an afterlife. As we all must live together here on earth, so we also have the ability to create either heaven or hell right here and right now. The sixth source is spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions. As UUs, we are cognizant and respectful of the contributions that indigenous, animist, pagan, and other nature-based belief systems have contributed to our understanding of how to live in harmony with the natural world, and how spiritual devotion can take the form of commitment to protect our planet, the only home that we have. As the Unitarian Universalist Association points out, these sources encompass science, poetry, scripture, and personal experience, creating a living tradition of wisdom and spirituality. Part of the beauty of drawing from numerous and multifaceted sources in our spiritual practice is that there is an inherent humility in it, the recognition that no person or tradition has all the answers. And just as John pointed out the importance of emphasizing that our search for truth and meaning must be free and responsible, I'll point out that our search is not for the one truth or the one meaning. They're not capitalized in the fourth principle, mind you. There's no capital T truth or capital M meaning. Similarly, we as UUs do not assume, or should not assume, that we have all the answers either. We are humble enough to recognize that there is so much about life, the universe, and everything that we simply do not know. The subject of answers reminds me of the UU hymn, "We Laugh, We Cry." Toward the end of every verse, we move into a phrase that begins, "And we believe in life and in the strength of love." And every verse ends with one possible answer. Not the answer, just a possible one. And we believe that sharing is an answer. And we believe that growing is an answer. That peace within our living is an answer. One more. Even to question truly is an answer. Sharing, growing, peace within our living, even to question. All of these can be an answer. And in each of these phrases, it is a process that leads to an answer. And a process, by definition, requires change. It can mean occasionally challenging your beliefs, your assumptions, and your biases. It can be unsettling or even painful. It can require the excavation and examination of hurt, oppression, destruction, and grief that may span years or centuries, but continues to shape every moment of every day. This process requires the willingness to recognize and acknowledge injustice and our own complicity in systems of injustice. It's not easy, but this process is made easier when you have a community of people to accompany you, people who are on their own paths and understand the ups and downs of the process, fellow travelers on the path of spiritual discovery, even if they're just walking parallel to you on a different path that leads elsewhere. To sum up, in our congregation, we're not looking for the answer, but we're looking for possible answers. And we're open to the possibility that there are some things that we simply don't know and may never know. That's why it's vital for UU congregations like ours to nurture a community of open-minded, inquisitive people with many diverse backgrounds, interests, and experiences to contribute to the continuing conversation that can guide the discovery of our own truths and meanings, plural, and share them with each other in a cooperative process of discovery. And now we're going to do a responsive reading called No One is Outside the Circle of Love. John is going to read a short passage, and then I will lead everybody in responding with the phrase, no one is outside the circle of love.
We know that hurt moves through the world, perpetrated by action, inaction, and indifference. Our values call us to live in the reality of the heartbreak of our world, remembering that no one is outside the circle of love. We who are Unitarian Universalists not only affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, we also affirm the inherent wholeness of every being, despite any apparent brokenness.
No one is outside the circle of love.
We know that things break or break down: promises, friendship, sobriety, hope, communication. This breaking happens because our human hearts and our very institutions are frail and imperfect. We make mistakes. Life is messy.
No one is outside the circle of love.
With compassion as our guide, we seek the well-being of all people. We seek to dismantle systems of oppression that undermine our collective humanity. We believe that we're here to guide one another toward love. No one is outside the circle of love. No matter how fractured we are, or once were, we can make whole people of ourselves. We are whole at our core because of the great, unnameable, sometimes inconceivable love in which we live. No one is outside the circle of love.
So please join us in singing hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. You can find the words in the comments on the Facebook Live video or in the order of service.
And before we get to the closing words or reading, I just wanted everybody, as you listen to this, to think of both the positive ways that you could take this reading, and also in part of that responsible search for truth and meaning. Think about ways in which maybe there could be a problem with this reading. And I think after we've gone through that, I might put Megan on the spot and ask her what she thinks about that question.
Some beliefs are like walled gardens. They encourage exclusiveness and the feeling of being especially privileged.
Other beliefs are expansive and lead the way into wider and deeper sympathies.
Some beliefs are like shadows, clouding children's days and fears of unknown calamities.
Other beliefs are like sunshine, blessing children with the warmth of happiness.
Some beliefs are divisive, separating saved from unsaved, friends from enemies.
Other beliefs are bonds in a world community where sincere differences beautify the pattern.
Some beliefs are like blinders, shutting off the power to choose one's own direction.
Other beliefs are like gateways opening wide vistas for exploration.
Some beliefs weaken a person's selfhood. They blight the growth of resourcefulness.
Other beliefs nurture self-confidence and enrich the feeling of personal worth.
Some beliefs are rigid, like the body of death, impotent in a changing world.
Other beliefs are pliable, like the young sapling, ever growing with the upward thrust of life.
So I guess John wants me to do sort of a critical thinking reminder about this reading, which has some truth to it, of course, right? But there's also the us versus them dynamic that's baked into the, well, some beliefs do this, but other beliefs do that. It's rarely black and white. It's rarely such a cut and dried situation. With spiritual beliefs, there's usually way more gray area than just this or that, some or other. And that's definitely something that UUs can understand, I think, because we kind of live in those gray areas. And we're always comparing and contrasting, looking at what some belief systems do well and what those same belief systems maybe could do better. I think it's a good example of how rarely things in real life are so cut and dried. Can I pass?
Sure. I mean, I would also add, though, that you seem to be speaking of like the ideal UU, but very often we don't do that.
That's true.
We do fall to that temptation to be holier than thou. And I think it's important to reflect on that and keep that in mind.
We're not perfect either.
I'll let you get on.
Please join me in reading the words for Extinguishing Our Chalice that can be found as a comment on the Facebook Live video or in the order of service, which is also posted as a comment on the video, and with thanks to Lynn Israel for extinguishing the chalice. So here we go. We extinguish this chalice with faith that it will be lit again next week, hope that we will see a better future, and an understanding that our own actions help make those possible. We've moved the offertory to the end of our service because when you click on the PayPal link provided in the Facebook Live video comments, you might lose your connection to our live feed if you're on a phone or tablet. We are still counting on your pledge payments and donations to help sustain and strengthen this congregation that is so important to all of us, supporting our efforts to be a community of love, truth, justice, and service. Please click on the link and be sure to select the correct designation on the drop-down box when you donate. Thank you. After After the service, please feel free to continue chatting with others in the comments on Facebook or join us for virtual coffee hour. Just click on the link in the comments on Facebook or in your order of service to be able to video chat with others. Or instead, you can call in through the provided phone number. So there's going to be a lot of information in the Facebook comments. Just keep an eye out for that. And now, let us sing Go With the Song in Your Heart. You can find the words as a comment on the Facebook Live video or in the order of service, which is also posted as a comment on the video.
Go with the song in your heart.